There is a skill that all high performers use to achieve more. And if you want to achieve more than 99% of the people out there, this is a skill you should learn. Now, this skill is used by all the high performers that I work with, and when I incorporate this, it helps me increase my productivity and my effectiveness across all areas of my life. What is this skill, you ask? I call it Savage Balance. If you learn Savage Balance and incorporate it, you can expect to have more focus, more energy, and better productivity. If you've struggled to balance all the roles you have to play and make time for all the things you want to achieve, stay tuned and I'll teach you how the highest performers use this skill to achieve more. Now, first, we need to separate the difference between success and high performance. Successful people achieve great things in their lives, and they're typically known for doing one thing really well. They might be a titan of industry, they might be the best mother on the planet, but they are willing to go all in on a single area at the expense of all others. Successful people are savages, but they have no balance. Look at Steve Jobs, for example. He accomplished so much for Pixar, for Apple, but in a biography by Walter Isaacson, Isaacson states how Jobs was curious and almost regretted the amount of time he put into both of those companies, as it probably had adverse effects on his health. Now, successful people achieve a lot in one area, but I wouldn't necessarily call them high performers. High performers create success in multiple areas of their life. They are savages and they have balance. They make time for family, for work, for personal development, and they achieve success in each of those areas. They do so by prioritizing what's important in work and in life, and then protecting the time and focus around those areas. That is savage balance. In our modern day, with so much reward placed in our careers, it's very easy to prioritize our work at the expense of everything else. Now, obviously, this can create success in the office, but it can lead to failure everywhere else. And when we are past our working days and we're into old age, we're not going to be surrounded by our old coworkers, and nobody's going to remember how many hours we put in the office. We will have our health, our memories, our friends, and our family. And do most of us create balance and time for all of those things? Successful people may not, but high performers do. If you can learn to create savage balance, you can make time to achieve what you want and desire in the office and in your personal life. So to learn savage balance, we have to talk about being savage and then creating balance. So let's first consider where we need to create balance in our lives. I like to think that there are three primary roles that we play, three key parts of our life where we need high performance. The first and most obvious is our careers. We are workers, we are producers and leaders. But again, in our modern world of career-driven competition, it can be easy to prioritize our work over everything else, even rest and recovery. Working all the time is mentally exhausting, and your brain can fire on all cylinders for a while, but eventually it's going to need a break. It's going to need to recover. Now, there are a lot of productivity tips and tricks to enhance your performance, but let's keep it simple and focus on time blocks. This is a simple one that always works. To create time blocks, you first need to figure out the 3 to 5 most important things that you need to get done during the day. Then, block those out on your calendar somewhere between 30 and 60-minute chunks. Start at number 1 and don't move to number 2 until the first is complete. And you might have some necessary distractions like getting pulled into meetings or talking to an employee, but go back to that first priority until it's done. The key here is to do one thing at a time. Be a savage about this. Multitasking is just an effective way to be ineffective. With intense focus, we can achieve a lot, but when our focus is spread across a bunch of things that we're trying to do at the same time, our brains can't pay attention to just one thing. We end up task switching and actually losing time and effectiveness because our brains are jumping from one topic to the next. Prioritize what's important, time block it, and then do them in priority order. But this is not just about career planning and focus at work. This is about balance. So let's move to the second big bucket that we need to prioritize. You also have a family. As I said before, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be surrounded by old coworkers, but friends and family, people who care about you. Now, if we invest time into the relationships that we have now, we could have strong connections for the rest of our life. And relationships take time to build and maintain. And relationships are built, destroyed, or maintained one conversation at a time. So how are we creating room for conversations in our life? I mean, think about how often are you distracted by work when you're spending time with family? How often is your phone open checking work emails, or maybe you're distracted by social media when you could be connecting with your spouse or your kids. High performers recognize these potential distractions, and just like with the career focus, they create time for their family and friends and relationships, and then guard that time. Now, this time could come across in many ways. It could be spending the mornings with your kids, or evenings with your spouse, weekly date night, monthly weekend retreats. You can get creative on what this time looks like, but family and relationships are just as important as career goals. Make family and relationship goals just as important as your career or personal goals. So block off time for your family. Show up as the best dad, mom, spouse you can. The payoff may not come for years, but the payoff will be immense. Now, there's another reason why we want to prioritize our families and relationships along with our careers. If you have poor relationships at home, that affects how we show up in the office. I mean, who showed up to work and did their best work after they just had a brutal fight with their spouse? Even high performers don't recover from that very quickly. But at the center of it all, our work, our relationships, is us. It's you. So we have to create balance for our own personal development. As the saying goes, you cannot fill from an empty cup. Your energy, your focus, your effectiveness all stems from how you're taking care of yourself and also what you're learning. Making time for personal care and personal development and learning is actually the pillar upon which everything else is stacked. And high performers know this. They regularly make time for learning, for exercise, for recovery, for time to think. Now, I'm not saying you should be an egomaniac and prioritize yourself over everything, but recognize that no matter which role you play, wherever you go, there you are. So how are you showing up as your best self? What are you doing to improve yourself? What are you doing to learn? How are you planning and executing against your goals? When it comes to making time for ourselves, I think there are 3 things that are most important. First, weekly reflection. Create time to set short-term and long-term goals and use that time to reflect upon your progress, your actions, your plans, and everything you're going to do to get there. This shouldn't take long. 30 minutes every week should be plenty to reflect upon what you've done and where you're going. Now, second, exercise. Just get after some workouts. Every high performer that I've ever worked with works out. And they're super busy, but they know they can't let their potential go to waste just because they don't have time. They make time. A 15-minute workout is better than a 0-minute workout, and you can get a lot done in 15 minutes. Now, when you exercise, you're going to have more energy, less anxiety, better focus. Overall, you just show up as a more effective human. Now, if you're setting goals and reflecting upon them and you're making time to work out, we also want to make time to learn. If we're not learning, we're not moving forward, which means everybody else is moving past us. If you're not sure where to start, make a list of all the things that you want to learn or need to learn and the resources where you can find that information. Then, on your calendar, block that time off. Personally, I read about 30 minutes a day, and that time is sacred. Every morning, wake up, grab some coffee, start reading. Got plenty to choose from. But without learning, we can't prepare for new challenges, and it's difficult to grow. So again, the 3 things for personal time is reflection, exercise, and learning. After we make time for ourselves, we make sure we make time for our relationships and our families and the other roles we play. And then once we do that well, then we can show up as the best version of ourselves as we go to work. So now we've established balance across the different areas of our life. How do we be savages about it? There's a few things that we can do to ensure that we're protecting the time that we have set aside and ensuring that we show up with intention. The first is practicing setting boundaries. If you're out at date night and your phone is blowing up with work emails and someone disturbs you from that time building a relationship, you should be personally offended. Work can wait. On a similar note, if you can't attend your kid's soccer game because you have to work late again, you're sacrificing that relationship for your career. And if you can't exercise in the morning because you've got work calls booked, yada, 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 I could go on. Now, I have absolutely been guilty of this. I'm not acting all high and mighty. This is a legit struggle because we place so much importance on our work or on these things that we prioritize that it's easy to miss the fact that anywhere we put effort comes at the expense of anywhere else we put effort. But that's why boundaries are so important. Set time for an activity and that becomes the focus. Nothing else can intrude. And it's okay to feel indignant about your boundaries. It's okay to fight for them. Even if we set boundaries, there's another thing we have to bring if we're going to be effective and be savages about that time, and that is intention. Being a savage does not mean we're passive. It means you are intentional, purposeful. If you create boundaries around family time and you want to strengthen the relationship with your kids, lead with that intention. When you step into a time block, put your phone away. Think about what you want to accomplish. If it's work or a personal goal, think about what are you trying to achieve. If it's a relationship, how do you want to make that other person feel? Focus on the what and why during that time block. That is being intentional. There will always be competitions for our time. This is where the third trick can come in handy when being a savage. That's using the power of transitions. High performers are very good at using transitions. They can transition from one environment to the next and be intentional about how they show up. So for example, somebody gets done on a work call and they're crushing work and they're awesome, and then it's time to go home and be mom or dad. They can go home, they can transition from the work environment to the home environment and show up as the best mom or dad or spouse that they can. Now, we experience transitions all day long, whether it's from work to home or from meeting to meeting. But during that transitionary period where we go from one thing to the next, we can use that time to pause and actually set an intention for how we want to show up. Now, the best method that I've learned, it was actually from Brendon Burchard's book, High Performance Habits. He tells a story where a gentleman is in his car. He teaches this guy this skill. A gentleman's in his car when he gets done with work, and he tells him to sit there for a couple minutes, slow down his breathing, and then think to himself, release, release. And during that time, release all the stress and the thoughts from the previous day. Just put them to the side for just a moment, and then think, how do I want to show up in the next environment? So if you're driving home and you need to sit in your car for a couple of minutes and think about this, think about releasing and the intention that you want to set, it increases the chances that you're going to go into that next environment with focus and attention. Transitions, they're not just things we experience or things that we should passively go through. They're times when we can actively consider and choose how we show up to the next event. So there we have it. If you want to create savage balance and learn to perform better and be a high achiever, remember these key takeaways. So first, make time for yourself. That way you can show up better for your relationships, and with those two, you can show up better as the best employee, leader, producer possible. Once you create that balance in your life, then you have to be a savage by creating boundaries, showing up with intention, and then leveraging transition to be intentional about how you show up. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep crushing it.